Hey everyone, I'm Stephanie, and I believe that all readers should read children's literature, especially adults. So that's what we do on the KidLit Love podcast. We celebrate all things children's literature, picture books, early readers, middle grade, and young adult novels too. Whether you're an adult reading to your inner child or connecting the young readers in your lives with fantastic books, you've come to the right place. Each week, we'll talk to a different children's literature author and discuss their books, their hopes and dreams for readers, their writing process, and much, much more. So grab a notebook to build your TBR and let's get to today's episode of KidLit Love. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the KidLit Love podcast. I'm Stephanie Alfinito, your KidLit loving host, inviting you back to another bookish conversation with a children's literature author and illustrator. Today I'm talking with Mike Boldt. Mike is the best-selling artist of Just Try One Bite, I Don't Want to Be a Frog, How to Grow a Dinosaur, and the Chip the Dog and Frog series. He's both the author and illustrator of Bad Dog, Find Fergus, A Tiger Tale, and the book he's here to talk about today, CANtaloupe and HoneyDO Bake a Cake. This book is part of Mike's Can Do series that focuses on a universal childhood experience and features two melons with hilariously and helpfully opposite attitudes. This book is brought to life in such a fun way, and I cannot wait to talk to Mike all about it. So let's do just that. Mike, welcome to KidLit Love. I'm so glad you're here, and I can't wait to chat with you today.
I'm so glad to be here, Stephanie. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So let's take the story back a little bit. Have you always been creative? Have you always known that this was what you were going to do? I would love for you to give us the backstory of how you got to where you are in children's literature today.
For sure. So I'd say yes, I've always been creative. I didn't know it was something I could always do for a career or anything, but I thought maybe I could pursue a job drawing Spider-Man as a kid or working at Disney. And I had a really great opportunity to actually work in a small publishing house here in Edmonton, Alberta. That's where I live, or just around. And so that showed me that books was kind of where I wanted to be, actually, not animation, not comics, specifically like Marvel comics. But yeah, because I've loved books all my life and drawing and coming up with stories and writing them out and drawing the characters that were supposed to be in them and such.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much. And then a few years into that small publishing house that I was working at, I decided to leave that and pursue publishing full time on my own and pursue work with with real publishers. So
what does a day in the life look like to someone who does both illustrate and write? Like I'm imagining this wonderful creative,
right.
Cloud that follows you, because I can draw stick people at best.
You know what? I still start with stick people. Everyone always says, "Oh, I can only draw stick people." I'm like, well, that's where I start.
That is good to know. I feel
Yeah,
better. Okay.
yeah. But I mean, my typical day, my family will go off to school, all of them, because my wife's a teacher, and then I will typically walk the dog, get some fresh air, and come into the studio here at home, and I will be typically drawing. Drawing is most days. Once in a while, I'm working on stories though, and storyboarding and stuff too, or planning out a story, or really just trying to come up with general ideas. And that often comes from doodling or hobby stuff. So, yeah, for the most part, then my day is filled with the drawing part of my project that I'm working on at the time.
So how did this Can Do series come about?
So the Can Do series came about actually. So a number of years ago, um, I had a book called Find Fergus, and it was a bear. I really loved the bear, and I thought this could be a series. There was potential for it about the bear interacting with the reader,
Mhm.
and then the reader basically coaching the bear through learning how to do something. And at that time, I had like a number of books planned. And at the same time, um, I have a bunch of sticky notes everywhere around my desk because when I get ideas, I just write them down and
Yes.
I'll come back to them and return to them. And I had a sticky note even beside my bed, and it just said, I had cantaloupe and honeydew written down on it. And I had the can or can't part of the can word cantaloupe, and I had the word do from honeydew circled. Because I thought, oh, there's like originally it was can't and do, as in like a positive and an opposite and a negative kind of. I thought, well, that's an interesting dynamic because they're always on fruit platters together, and and so I thought there might be something there. And then when um, some of they decided they didn't want to do any more of the Fergus books, I realized that some of these ideas actually would translate probably even better to this idea with these two melons.
Mhm.
And so that was like the genesis of it right there, where I had a couple of these ideas for Fergus that they were I wouldn't say they were especially strong, which is probably why they never progressed further in that book series, but they worked very well for this. And that's kind of just one of those happy coincidences that happen within this world of publishing and
Yes.
coming up with ideas and merging them together, and also cutting some free. That's a part of it too. Sometimes
Yeah.
sad, but it happens a lot. And so, yeah, the Can Do series, I really started to focus in on the not so much the can't side, because I didn't want one character to have like a negative
Mhm.
outlook on life, but I wanted them to be maybe, sometimes we look at at people who are a little bit more hesitant as oh, they need to just get out there and just do everything. So Honeydew became a character that just jumps in with both feet,
Yeah.
no hesitation, not always thinking about what they're doing. And Cantaloupe was a character that I wanted to have a little bit of that hesitation. Not that they can't do it, but they think about the process a little bit more. And I kind of saw that in my own children too, which is fostered by like different ways of learning how to do things too. And so it really just poured into I'm like, okay, like riding a bike, that's got to be the first thing. And maybe if you think that you like in that first one ride a bike, Cantaloupe falls and so thinks that they can't ride a bike because they fell, oh, I'm unable to do this. And and even though they knew the procedure and the proper form and everything to do to ride a bike, they thought they couldn't because they failed. And that's a very, I think, relatable thing to many of us. Even within publishing, we'll write a story, get rejected. Oh, I can't do this.
That's right. Yep. It goes
uh,
well beyond riding a bike.
yes, yes. And so, meanwhile, Honeydew has never ridden a bike, doesn't know how, believes they can, but in the end kind of like relies on Cantaloupe showing them how to do it, and then Cantaloupe discovers, oh, they can ride a bike. And so I like showing that there are many different ways of learning how to do these new experiences, and there isn't a right way, there isn't a wrong way, there's just different ways. And so and how these experiences relate to each of us, and relate to the kids who are reading the books. And I that's kind of what you hope to come across or get across with this series, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so much. I mean, as you said, riding a bike, and now the one we're talking about today, baking a cake, they are
Yes.
universal things that just about all of us at least attempt to do and can very much relate to. And this
Yes.
idea of, one of the characters thinking, well, I can't do it. I don't know if I can do it, which is what all of us go through. And then we
Right.
fail at it, but we fail forward and we don't really realize that's what we're doing. And so these books just take this very relatable thing that just about all of us have experience with and can connect with somehow. We all have a personal connection somehow to what's going on. And that's that beautiful theme of, yeah, you can. Yeah, you can. Maybe not the very first second that you're doing
Right.
something, and maybe you have to figure it out, but you can. So
Yes.
it has this, parallel of just a fun a fun book with a fun experience going on with these deeper themes of of I guess determination and patience and confidence and all of those other things and just this very very fun story, which I'll ask you about the illustrations. I really want to talk about those, but I have to I want to ask you first. Are you cantaloupe or honeydew? Like
Oh.
which is you?
um, and probably when I was younger, I probably a little bit of both.
Yes.
And I'm probably a little bit of both, and I think most of us are. Like, I think in life, we'll have certain things in life that we're willing to jump right into and do, and other things in life we're very hesitant. I think very few people are entirely one or the other,
Right.
but some of us are, and that's okay too. Um, I think with parenting, I'm probably more the cantaloupe.
I hear you.
Yeah. So, but at the same time, it's good. It's freeing to do these things. And again, um, I think we sometimes I want to be the honeydew when it comes to certain things and learning certain things and tackling them. And so there are things that I really do kind of just jump into and embrace and not worry about the mistakes. And that's one of like honeydew's strengths is like they're not necessarily it's also a weakness a little bit. You're not really worried about the consequences.
Right.
uh, but cantaloupe is very concerned about the consequences, right? Which is sometimes what holds you back.
Yeah.
And so like there's reasons why there's instructions in a recipe that
Yeah.
you have to follow. You can't just mix everything together right away.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I'm probably more the cantaloupe at this stage in life.
I've been the cantaloupe my whole entire life. And it was fun to think about it that way and actually so this past obviously I read your books a little before to prepare for
Mhm.
the episode
Yeah.
and this past weekend I had to do something that I was nervous to do. It was a big presentation. There were a lot of people. It was brand new.
Mm,
I was excited about it, but I was also the classic overthinker of did I plan it well and are they going to like this? The typical things. And before I went in, you give yourself that little pep talk and I was telling myself, "Come on, be a honeydew, Stephanie." Because I had just read your book. I'm like, "Be honeydew, be honeydew." So, the book is technically for children, but these lessons inside, adults need them, feel them, connect to them just as much as kids. And now I feel like I've got someone on my shoulder that can cheer me on and
yeah,
help me move out of my typical personality groove into a more confident, let's do it kind of place. So
for sure, for
it
sure.
helps me.
Well, that's cool to hear. I like that. I like the idea of them being the two little whispering characters on your shoulder.
Yeah, I mean, really, that is kind of what happens in real life, right? We kind of do this
Yep,
back and forth dance with ourselves, and instead we have this in a really fun way on
sure.
on the page. And
It's
so,
how we convince ourselves to do these things.
yes, yes, you're right. It is sometimes an internal battle back and forth. Now, in looking at Cantaloupe and Melon Bake a Cake, which is the newest one, that has come out, or I guess at the time of recording will come
Okay.
out. I and again, we'll talk about the illustration soon, but I loved every page of this book because I have such wonderful memories of cooking with my grandmother in my childhood.
Yeah,
And I remember, you know, saying to her like, how does
yeah.
this turn into that? I remember the impatient wait at
Hmm.
at the oven. I remember turning the mixer on a little too early and seeing what happens. So I feel like you've just captured the exact childhood essence of what happens when you do something like this, including that a step in the recipe should be the cleanup.
Yes. Yeah, no, I think I mean many of us have witnessed these things or participated in them and or overseen them as a parent, right? And
Yeah.
so I had this idea of I mean, so many of these cantaloupe and honeydew ideas were like snapshots of images of what kids do and what kids learn to do and just trying to do things like it's not they weren't necessarily my kids as much, but like some kids are just like they just decide to do stuff and like they have like no melons talking to them. They're just they're just fully invested in like pursuing that goal that they have literally just set like 1 minute ago.
Yeah.
And I really love that. And I that's kind of the what I wanted to embrace in some of these, and especially in like Honeydew's character,
Yeah.
is like the no consultation, this straight into the activity of whatever they were going to do with like 100% effort.
How do you kind of put yourself back there? Like back to what it would have been like riding a bike for the first time, what that
Mm,
cake baking experience might have been like. You do have to kind of put yourself back in
yeah.
childhood or maintain that childlike kind of attitude. How do you do that for yourself?
Um, I do like to consider myself a bit of like I like to observe life. I like to observe um actions, and I like to observe little mannerisms that like people or especially kids have in how they do things. Uh, of course, I'm drawing upon my own memory, my own experiences. I remember riding a bike and that first time too, and falling.
Yep.
I remember being the parent running behind, and even my own parents running behind, right? Like they're no longer holding on, but they somehow think that they're doing something.
Yep.
And in a sense, they're assuring their kids, which is doing something, right? Like I
Yeah.
remember drawing strength from my dad running basically behind me the entire block. Like I think he ran like a kilometer, or like I guess in American that's like a half a mile.
Yep.
But like just trying to keep up with me before I finally like pulled over and stopped. And he thankfully he was in decent shape because I never had to pursue my own kids that far. I think I was yelling for them to turn around. Um, but I remembered some of these experiences, right? And drawing upon them. And then from what I observe in life and like watching my nieces, my nephews, or even in public, the way children act when you're even in a food court. Like there are so many little things, the way they answer, the way they jump into something. And yeah, that's where that's a lot of like my I bank those things.
Yeah.
And I like to try to make notes of them too. So that's where like a sketchbook comes in and little. My desk is covered in well, it's a mess, but it's a lot of sticky notes, and it has little ideas for books, but it also has little notes and memories and stuff and things I want to contribute or add into a book or an idea.
I mentioned before we hit record that we were kindred spirits for the ways that we were thinking about reading, and we are now kindred spirits for our love of sticky notes because I also, no one can see them, but on the around me, in front of me, they are everywhere. Do you have, I always ask this question because I have a notebook obsession. I have far too many. Well, no, I'm not going to say there's far too many of them. I think it is just the perfect amount of notebooks all
Yeah,
around me. Do you have a certain notebook that you love? Because I know I love certain notebooks and gel pens, and I'm just curious for someone who's like life is creating. Do you have a certain notebook you love, or is it anything you can just get the idea out on?
yeah. You know what? I'm not like a brand. I don't need anything as long as it's I can make marks on it. It works for me. I mean, some of them I probably have been more I've appreciated them a little bit more in working through them, but once you started, I'm not so worried about the book itself. And a lot of what I do too will just be like digital these days, right?
Mhm.
It's so easy to record those notes and put them digitally on the computer, and I have like a monitor that I draw on, right? So that ends up being a lot of sketches and doodles there because they're very easy to file away, and I can draw them up at any time I need without having to shuffle through a sketchbook looking for something.
Yeah. Or what happens to me, I'll have the best idea for something that I'm
Mm.
writing that will then be covered in coffee, and I can't quite tell what it was in the mechanical pencil underneath
Right.
that. Yeah. So the digital aspect certainly helps there. So let's talk about that process. because I want listeners to imagine if they haven't seen these books yet. It is this beautiful blend of real life images, like
Mhm.
the cantaloupe, like the honeydew, like the chocolate cake looks so good. Even if it was uneven, it looks so delicious. These layered digital pieces, like the expressions and the different backgrounds that change. What is your process of creating that and bringing it to life?
Yeah, so not at all like what I've done before in my other books,
Yeah.
which are a lot more heavily illustrated, and more painted looking. Um, so when I was starting out with these ones, I loved the idea, but I was a little unsure about how I was gonna portray the artwork because honeydew I could have probably gotten away with, but the cantaloupe with like that weird texture on it, I tried a number of times and it just did not look right. And finally, I just decided, what if I just superimpose the texture on there graphically on my drawing? But because they were just basically round, I'm like, why don't I just use a photo
Yeah.
and just use the photo? It has the shade, like it'll have a three-dimensional look instantly. That'll save me time. And then I thought maybe I'll just do everything photos and make it very like collage feeling and thrown together, but like go with a mix of illustration, obviously drawing the face. I decided very quickly to draw digitally the faces on the melons because it just didn't look right trying to put it like on a three-dimensional real life shape and then take the photos and editing it and changing the facial
Wondered if you
expressions.
tried that first. I'm so glad you said that because I was like, I
Yeah.
wonder if he just played around one day at his kitchen table with googly eyes or something.
Yeah, it was virtually like a 5 minute, this is not gonna work. It's just gonna be so much easier. I knew from the beginning it probably was gonna be that once I decided on it. But most of the photographs are actually like I would go to like a royalty free source I would draw. But I took the photos of the cantaloupe and the honeydew myself
You did.
because I might be able to illustrate, but I don't have like I'm not a photographer. I don't have that skill set. And I realized I'm like, as much as I'd love to take the photos of everything, um, I don't have like the proper studio for it with like the lights and all of that stuff to do it right. Because I was taking some photos at first, and some of the photos in Bake a Cake were my own of like the measuring spoons and stuff that I just couldn't find properly. So I just used some of our own or the measuring cups and stuff like that, or the mixing bowl even. Which is funny because I had to Photoshop out my own reflection because there was like a silver mixing bowl. So also I'm working on it
Oh,
later. I'm like, oh wait, there's my upside down head in there. I better take that out. And so yeah, it was a very different book, and I thought it was going to be very quick, very simple, because my illustrations I know how long they take, and I thought, oh, I'm just taking a photo, quickly cutting it out, throwing it in this scene, and drawing a face on it, and so on. And then I'm like, one, especially the cake one, it started taking quite a bit longer because there were just so many elements I wanted to mix and match and work together. And then finding elements too that have like multiple angles. And so because you don't want it to always be
right.
just the exact same thing.
Right. The
So
melons do change direction, right? Because of what
sure.
you're doing. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's some little tricky things and it's been coming together. But again, like this whole thing has been a learning process for me, and I've actually really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
But I don't. I mean, it won't be the only way I ever create moving forward. I still love drawing and all these other things, but it's fun to have something new in the catalog too, and have tried something new.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like any, I guess I would say creative act, whether it's drawing, if it's painting, if it's writing, like we're
Mm.
constantly trying to push the edges, right? To keep
Mhm.
growing a bit. And even at this stage in your career with all of these wonderful books, this is a new kind of way of reaching
Right.
readers. And I think the realness of those elements, it's fun. It is a fun book, and I think kids, adults, are imagining their own produce in new
Yeah.
ways.
Yeah.
So imaginative and creative, and I can just see kids leaning into the pages more because of those real elements that are brought to life. And I imagine it would inspire some of them to go from reading your books to, you know, I could see as a teacher, as a former teacher of little people, I would say, okay, let's get out our paper. Let's pick out our pictures and then layer our faces on them and really take it to the creating side. So I think your book
Sure.
could really be an inspiration for kids to try something like that too.
I mean, that'd be amazing if it could inspire some kind of creativity and desire to make things. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's like the ultimate, I would imagine, as a creator to see not only others enjoying what you have done, but then
Mhm.
using it to spark their own creativity as well.
It is, like I will, even if it's not necessarily creative, but just for example, like um my agency, her daughters were learning to ride the bike right during this whole process of the first book with Ride a Bike. And there was a funny pose that Honeydew is doing because he doesn't know how to sit on the bike properly. And so her daughter did that same thing, right? And like, look, I'm Honeydew, right? And it was just one of the most charming photos and just like warms your heart, right? It's like, oh, like they loved this so much. They wanted to emulate it and then share that with me too. It's like, and you do get that. Fans will send in things, sending in their drawings of characters, whether it's like Rocky from the Bad Dog book or um the Fergus or even like the Frog series too, or Chip the Dog. There's lots of them, and then you get these, and you think not only did they take the time to create something that they were inspired by, but they also like shared it with you too. It really does. It really is a feel good moment.
It is like just the book world, I think is just a really wonderful world. But, when you have a chance to interact in a way that it may never be in person, but your words, your images just reach a child in childhood. There's just something
Mhm.
magical about children's literature like that. It stays with you. It sticks with you. Um, I can't think now of what the exact quote is, but one of my favorite movies is You've Got Mail, right?
Mm.
Gosh, I'm
Tom Hanks,
yes, thank you. I'm like Tom Hanks and
Meg
Meg
Ryan.
Ryan. That's who it was. And she's Kathleen Kelly, and she's the owner of the bookstore. And
Yeah.
in that movie, she talks about there's just no other experience as reading a book. It just touches you in a way that it can't when you are older and more cantaloupe like.
There is something special about books and literature and the story, but it's more than just like the physical book. It's the story, right? It's the interactive process, whether it's like listening to a book or listening to um, someone share a story with you, even personally, like face to face when you're having a conversation with someone. Like it's that whole it just all you have is pictures in your head, and it's such a interesting way of consuming I don't know, experiences and such. And I think that's probably why I love working in books as much as I do. It's very, I don't know, like it's just unleashing your imagination upon like almost anything you'd want, right? And of course there are things that don't work and you deal with the rejection and all those things, but it is a very rewarding thing too. So I love it.
Thank goodness, because we love it on the receiving end. And we've mentioned the first two books, and we've got Cantaloupe and Honeydew Ride a Bike, Cantaloupe and Honeydew Bake a Cake.
Hmm.
Can you tell us about what we might expect in the future for more?
Well, recently, yes, there's going to be four more Cantaloupe and Honeydew books,
That's
which I'm
so
very, very
exciting.
excited about. Yeah,
Congratulations.
I'm over the moon about it. I have loved working with my editor and art director on this series. They have helped like kind of like inspire the idea too so much, where we really feed off of each other in a very positive way when we're constructing these stories. And so I'm in the middle of the third one right now, and it's been a very back and forth story process so far, with like revisions and ideas and edits. And while that's like sometimes a bit of like a painful process, the where the story is now versus like just the simple idea at the beginning, where you think the idea is great, but then when you start working on it, you're like, oh, there's a lot of things that aren't working or gelling or don't make sense. Or and so then the feedback I've been getting from the team has just been so valuable. And I just really appreciate the insight that, and the way that they put, like, they're just as passionate about these books as I am, which I mean, I think sometimes there's like not understanding of what the publisher's role is in all of these things. And I mean, I'm sure maybe there are some bad experiences, but that hasn't been the case, and definitely not the case on this series. And so, yeah, I'm just thrilled to be working on more of them, and even like waiting for people to be able to read the Bake a Cake book that's coming out. And I'm excited because there are certain pages that you do in those books during the process that were part of that original idea, and they're very funny in my head. And I hope that people people enjoy them as much as I did creating them.
Yeah, they will. I did. This reader did for sure. And I know from experience of reading hundreds of books with thousands of kids that yes, they will too. It's exciting. And I'm so happy to know that there are multiple books coming. We
Mm,
chatted briefly before we hit record, and there's just something special about a series of
mm,
books. It's, once kids have that first one and they know there are more, it fuels their love of reading. For kids that are perhaps reluctant readers or perhaps experience difficulty learning how to read at first, the fact that you can find these characters that you love in a book that feels good and is fun, it makes them want to go to the next one. And now,
mhm.
thankfully, the next one and the next one and the next one. Now that we know there are there are four more coming, so it's so exciting to know that we'll get to see more firsts, more experiences
Yes.
with these two.
Well, and I hope that like one of the things that I wanted to do in this series was I didn't want each book to actually be the same, where Cantaloupe's always the reserved one, and Honeydew's always the one jumping in first.
Yeah.
And so there's going to be a lot of different ways that the way that those two learn actually are quite different, even within different experiences. So, like the first one, yes, Cantaloupe wants to ride a bike, or doesn't want to ride a bike anymore, and Honeydew does. And in Bake a Cake, Honeydew is actually going to be the one to be like, hey, like, instructions and process are important.
Yes.
And so, but there's going to be other things they deal with, like if there's fears of things that kids, like, it's not just learning things. There's like sometimes they'll deal with the fear of learning, or um, the maybe the thinking they should both know and then they don't, and maybe what compromise looks like when you're learning. And so there's all these different themes I want to bring into this series that I hope the kids stay invested in them because they enjoy the characters at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it
So
goes back to what I said earlier. It's this beautiful parallel of the fun,
yeah.
engaging, let me peer as close as I can to these images, while at the same time, these really important themes
Mm,
are coming through, and readers, they're there for both.
hopefully.
Yes. Yes. They're wonderful. Now, where can listeners find you online if they want to keep up to date about when these next books are coming out, or any other creative projects that you're working on? You want to share?
Sure.
Yeah.
uh, I have a website, just mikebolt.ca. And then I have socials out there right now. Like Instagram is probably one of the better ones. There is Twitter too. I just don't know if how long that one's going to be around for, or
Yeah.
effective. And then I mean, I do try to put on like the Blue Sky and the threads, and there even is even a YouTube channel that I have. But it's mostly just like process videos and things on there. So
Oh, we love process videos. That would be wonderful.
yeah.
I will find those and I will put them all in the show notes so listeners can find you on the platform that they prefer. And I imagine I know a lot of my listeners and they love this backstory. They love the process. So I imagine they'll be clicking on the YouTube channel too. I will make sure to put all of that in the notes and of course links to the books that
Oh,
were
thank you.
in the episodes too.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm pretty excited. I actually uh at the time of the recording, next month in February, I get to go and tour some of the different states and stuff for the Bake a Cake. And so I'm very excited to
Oh, wow.
bring cantaloupe to all these kids on different parts of the US.
Yes. That like we talked about has got to be the ultimate experience as the creator to
Yes.
not just get the email or the social media post, but to see the in real life joy. Oh,
Hmm. Yeah,
have
no,
fun.
it is something. I a crowd full of kids like laughing at one of your stories is like, yeah, that's fuel that keeps you going for months.
It's ultimate high.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today. I really enjoyed getting to know you, talking more about Cantaloupe and Honeydew and figuring out the next books that are coming and sharing those with listeners. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much for having me on, Stephanie. It was a real pleasure to meet you, and I appreciate the opportunity. So,
Thank you. And listeners, thank you for listening to another episode of KidLit Love, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for listening to today's episode of the KidLit Love podcast. You'll find links to all the books, resources, and ideas mentioned in the show notes at alitlife.com. And if you want more, you might like to listen to my other podcast called Get Literate. It's a podcast that explores all things books and reading, notebooks and writing, and everything in between to build a life you love. One more thing. If you love what you listened to today, please take a moment to rate and review the podcast or take a screenshot of the episode and text it to a bookish friend. This helps the podcast grow and builds our bookish community of KidLit Love. Thanks for listening.